Ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor to have in studio with us someone who's actually no stranger to our broadcast. He's been a guest a number of times, and I'm sure you were as pleasantly surprised and gratified to see and hear that he was selected to be the vice presidential nominee by the Green Party. This is the Baraka ticket. So joining us right now in studio is the vice presidential half of the ticket. As you know, we talk with Jill Stein at least once a month. And so now we've got her VP nominee right here and in studio, no less. He is none other than our dear friend and brother, Ajamu Baraka. My brother, how are you, man?
I am doing well. It's a pleasure to be with you once again.
Yeah, man, and good to see you in person too, and
yes,
right
yes.
here
Yeah.
in studio. Well, let's start with the fundamental question: How did this come about? You accepting the nomination and even considering it?
Well, that's been the question among our folk, because I'm not normally associated with the electoral process. Mm-hmm. But I've always had, Mark, an opinion about how this process can help to advance progressive politics. I've always said that we have not taken full advantage of its possibilities to galvanize people and to win spaces within the state in order to advance the interests of our people and other struggling people. So 2016 to me was a moment to consider how this process might be able to advance a national conversation around how we advance a progressive movement. I from the very beginning understood that the Bernie Sanders phenomenon was going to probably be significant because the people are looking for alternatives. They are fed up with these two elite parties that don't seem to be interested in them and their real interests. And we saw what happened with the Sanders campaign. So when Jill asked me to consider this, and I knew that the Green Party and her campaign are committed to building alternative structures, building a party apparatus that can serve as an instrument for progressive change, I thought about it, and I said, look, let's go ahead and do it, Jill.
Yeah.
Let's build something new.
One, you can probably imagine one of the most significant things you said the other night, and of course, folks, we all saw the CNN town hall, at least we hope you did, the Green town hall. You didn't mince any words about your feelings about the Sanders campaign. I think, you might as well have talked to me before you made that statement. You, myself, other comrades whom we mutually know, pretty much all had the same sentiment. We saw some opportunity there, but it was almost as if, especially in terms of people of color in general, African Americans specifically, something just missing, and in the Sanders movement, and still not quite an interest in building solidarity with people like us. And I tried to be polite all during the campaign and on the air because I like Bernie. But to be honest with you, Ajamu, and when the WikiLeaks came out and it was revealed that the DNC staff didn't want Debbie Wasserman Schultz on my show, I really can't say anything different about the Sanders campaign. It was equally as difficult to get Sanders to come on the brother show. So, that fell short. Do you think, and this is more of a rhetorical question because it's obvious, you've been picked to be the VP nominee for the Green Party, an African-centered, Pan-Africanist activist. I think that in and of itself says that this goes far beyond even what the Sanders movement was doing specifically in terms of people of color and Africans in particular.
I think it does. I think it reflects a real commitment on the part of the Stein campaign to to understand that to build a progressive movement here in this country, we have to have all of the communities, all of the sectors involved. And I'm not suggesting that I'm the representative of African Americans, but she's, I think, is a reflection of her commitment to radical politics. So, it's the Sanders campaign. I mean, we have to, acknowledge that that campaign did do something significant. It broadened the scope of conversation. He introduced to a mass audience the concept of democratic socialism. He talked about the need for a political revolution. And he tapped into what many of us knew was already there, which was a desire for change, for a real alternative. So we have to give him credit for that. My critique, and I was like you, I was pretty polite. I never wrote a full article on the Sanders campaign. In fact, I thought some of the critiques became a little excessive and silly. But there was one time where the Sanders folks were pushing back, saying that those critiques, and they were raising some legitimate points, were coming from a purist, dogmatic position. And I wrote back and said, no, they're trying to make this campaign better. They're trying to say that don't make the same mistakes that progressives have made in the past, in particular progressives who happen to be white, who will look just at, for example, lives in the U.S. and ignore the impact of U.S. foreign policies on the lives of people around the world. You don't have to do that. The people are prepared and ready for a real progressive candidate. You don't have to embrace drone killings. You don't have to be silent on the activities of the Saudis and calling for the Saudis to be more involved when we knew that their hands are not only dirty but dripping with blood. So I raised this as a principal critique because, like I told folks the other day, I wanted to feel the burn. Yeah. But I couldn't, in principle, do that when Brother Bernie was given a free pass to U.S. imperialism. Yeah. So, in principle, you have to raise those questions. Look, those of us who are serious about building power, who understand the need for unity, you get past those kinds of principled internal conversations and debates. I wrote a pretty scathing article about our dear brother Cornel West, asking Cornel why he, in essence, couldn't get his board together in terms of the foreign policy piece, and said that you need to reconsider. Everybody thought that was going to be some kind of point of contention between me and Cornel. It didn't faze him one bit. In fact, on the other night at CNN town hall meeting, the brother flew all the way up to New York to be with me and was right there in the front row. You understand? He's part of the Stein Baraka campaign. So, when we're serious about building real power, we don't let, insignificant controversies undermine us. Because, look, we up against a disciplined and serious machine. Sanders and Clinton made up after a very tough campaign because they said that they were combining in order to resist something they thought was more important than their differences, which was the Trump folks. If they can do that, then I think progressives can do the same thing.
The argument has been made by Jill, of course, that there's really not a difference between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. What are your thoughts about that, and can you expound on that?
Well, I'm not sure exactly what she means by that, because in terms of reducing the ability of the people to have choice, and in terms of the continued rightward direction of politics, I mean, the differences between a sprint to the right and a slow walk to the right. But there are some differences. I mean, the social forces supporting Trump represent the dark side of humanity. Very dangerous forces, no question about that. But the social forces that are the financial base of the Clinton machine also represent even more, in some ways, evil forces. The transnational elite that has no loyalty to any country and any people, whose only concern is to maintain their dominance in the world. Those are the forces that are the primary backers of the Clinton machine. So, in terms of the people, we don't have much choice unless we are prepared to, in fact, support principles, support real democracy, and get behind a campaign like the campaign that we are organizing.
There, of course, are the vast majority of African Americans support the Democratic Party, have for decades. What message would you deliver, Brother Ajamu, to the African American electorate for a change, seriously consider the Green Party as an alternative to the Democratic Party?
My position's always been that we have to have respect. It's absolutely clear that the Democrats have taken our vote, our people, for granted for decades. And they do that because they know there's no alternative at this point, structurally. Malcolm and others have always said that if we're going to maintain our independence, we're going to engage in electoral politics, maintain your independent stance. Don't give your vote to anybody. So if you have an alternative structure like a green structure, where the Democrats are now then forced to compete for your vote, it gives you leverage. So I say, remind ourselves of our dignity. Don't allow these folks to take us for granted, and we get nothing in return. No specific programs to address the grinding problems that face our people. Nothing but symbols. So, I say, look, let's not be afraid. Let's transcend the politics of fear, and let's consider abandoning the Democratic plantation. The doors are open. Massa is looking another direction. We can leave this plantation and do something different.
Speaking of which, and I, Ajamu Baraka, folks, vice presidential nominee for the Green Party. Speaking of which, Chris Cuomo, I believe he accused or stated the other night, and if this is not accurate because I wasn't aware of it, is it true? Did you say Did you call President Obama Uncle Tom? I didn't know that happened. Did that actually happen at some point in time? There was,
my writing was pretty scathing regarding the failures of the Obama administration and his abandonment of any kind of specific programs, policies to deal with the plight of African Americans, even after it was quite obvious to everyone who follows politics that he could not have been elected without the massive support of the African American population. It became clear to me from the very beginning that Barack Obama was selected to basically continue the service to the white ruling class, and he did that with enthusiasm. If you are in service of white power and you abandon your own people, what does that make you? It makes you a 21st century version of a very despicable character. So in my polemics and trying to wake people up and to think about this process a little differently, I use that term.
You are the founder of the U.S. Human Rights Network. How does that experience prepare you to be Vice President of the United States?
My experience is building that organization and other organizations, managing people, managing budgets, understanding strategic development, combined with my understanding of the geopolitical world, and my common sense prepares me to be able to assume this position. Plus, Mark, we have to demystify this notion of what it takes to govern. They want to make people believe that you have to have these special skills, that you have to come from an Ivy League school, But that's all. It's all nonsense. It's not real. You have to have lived some life, have some common sense, understand the world, understand how you build effective teams to get things done, be able to communicate to the people, and have some vision. And when you have those kinds of skills, you can involve yourself in almost any endeavor, and you can definitely involve yourself in any kind of governance process.
I guess too, and I appreciate that answer. I should have asked it another way though, not so much in terms of your organizational skills and abilities, but when we talk about human rights and the Human Rights Network and the causes you have championed, and the attention or lack of attention or lack of prioritization of human rights, period. How does that motivate you to want to be in the White House, and what would you do on behalf of human rights if you were in the White House? Now, we should, just for the record, as I'm sure people can figure out by now, I don't know that anybody's ever run for president or vice president on a human rights platform, so that in and of itself is unique. But just in terms of the causes you champion, and I want to just remind everyone, you made the very sound argument that the victims of Hurricane Katrina should be treated as internally displaced persons. I'd love to hear your thoughts about even what's going on in Louisiana right now, very similar situation. But how do those causes and the lack of addressing the issues of human rights, how does that prepare you and motivate you to want to be in the White House, and how would you use that?
Well, what we would do if we were able to assume power, and when we assume power, we would not do what the other traditional parties do, which is basically to demobilize our supporters, for them to disengage. We would have to continue our struggle, because just having some nominal control of one aspect of the state, as important as that is not going to be the kind of pressure we have to exert in order to get our programs through Congress, for example. So that was number one. What we would do in terms of human rights is we would fashion our, and right now our platform is grounded in commitment to human rights. When we talk about and concern about the issues of housing, education, food security, all of the environment, all of these are the things that people need to have in order to live a dignified life. These are, in fact, fundamental human rights. So our commitment will be reflected in making that argument more explicit, more understandable. That basically our administration would be one that would be geared toward advancing human rights. What that means also, too, is that in our foreign policy, we will have to alter U.S. foreign policy so that it is not involved in activities that are responsible for the killing and destruction of people and nations around the world. That has to be our external commitment to human rights. Third, we have to demonstrate our commitment to human rights by signing and ratifying all of the major human rights treaties. The U.S. has only signed and ratified 3 of the major human rights treaties. For example, one important treaty we would ratify is the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. In that treaty, it's reflective of those rights I just mentioned. It says that a state is obligated to ensure that all of the people in that state have their fundamental rights protected by the state, their right to education, to housing, to health care, to a clean environment, to clean water, to sanitation, to transportation, to real social security, to participate in the life of their government. These are all the fundamental rights that you have to have reflected and protected by the state. So we would have that treaty ratified, and that will become the law of the land and the basis of us trying to push through legislation to, in fact, make that happen.
Ajamu Baraka with us, folks. Speaking of human rights, there's some that, even some who call into this show, who agree with your position about President Obama Some even stated plainly they feel like he's done something for everybody else but us. However, there's some who also note that toward the end now, it looks like he may be trying to make a statement in other ways. For example, just this week, or yesterday even, the decision by his Justice Department to end private prisons. He last week or a week before commuted the sentences of hundreds of nonviolent drug offenders, which again is another issue as far as I'm concerned, and I know you hold the same position, an issue of human rights, what's going on in the prison system. Do you think he should get credit for that, even if it is coming at this hour?
Of course, he gets credit for that. I guess the question becomes, why couldn't he have done that earlier, when the courts suggested that, or not suggested, when they ruled that the mandatory minimums were in fact unconstitutional, and many people were released. There were thousands who needed relief from the federal government, and who the DOJ could have went back to court and got their sentences retroactively commuted, and they could have been released. But they failed to do that. In fact, they oppose any kind of retroactive actions. So, and then we have what I've been writing about, which I'm absolutely perplexed about, and that is, with these rash of these police killings across the country that we see on video, we see these unlawful shootings. Somebody explain to me why Obama's Department of Justice only had enough energy or only saw fit to prosecute one of these killer cops, but yet they get a pass from many people across this country, including some of us who are organizing the movement to bring about accountability. No, the federal government under Barack Obama has failed us in that field. So this is a little bit too little, too late. I mean, let me make one last example. The Department of Homeland Security released a report that said that the number one threat of terrorism in the U.S. came not from Muslim extremists, but from who? White nationalist groups, and the white nationalist lone wolf was the most dangerous.
Right. Because
the right wing of the Republicans said that this was a partisan report, which is interesting that it will say that, put pressure on the administration, and they took the report down. They did not disseminate that vital information. My question is this: if that information had been disseminated and people understood the real threat in terms of domestic terrorism, when that young man walked into Mother Emanuel that evening, even though we know our people are open and welcoming to anybody who seems like they want to worship, if they had been aware of the potential threat, maybe a couple of them would have positioned themselves around this young man, just watching him as they prayed. They keep one eye open on this cat, understanding who he might be, and maybe we could have avoided a tragedy. But because they didn't have that information, look what happened. So, and we start trying to wake people up to that. I wrote a very scathing piece on that, and people were beginning to raise questions. Obama shows up at the funeral, and he sings us Amazing Grace, and sings folks right back to sleep. So I got issues with this individual.
I want to get your, speaking of foreign policy too, as you just outlined, want to get your original thoughts on that. And one of the things, obviously, that happens in these campaigns, and we're under this two-party system, is that the two parties get all the coverage. So even criticism and perspectives of the public are filtered through one of those two candidates.
Yes.
So Trump says Obama and Clinton created ISIS and are the MVPs of ISIS. Glenn Ford was on with us this week, and he said Trump's critique is inaccurate, but he said Glenn's argument is the Obama administration is not off the hook in some of these foreign policy matters. It's just that what Trump is doing is inarticulate and his characteristically foolish. What are, and you mentioned the Saudis earlier too, but tell us your critique of foreign policy with regards to the Arab world under President Obama.
It's been an absolute disaster that he has continued the policies of the Bush administration. In fact, in some ways, he's been even more aggressive by opening up new fronts of assaults in places like Libya, and providing support to the creation of the war in Syria, of reinvading, in essence, Iraq, and prolonging the agony of Afghanistan, and turning his back on the coup that took place in Egypt, and expanding the drone warfare across the so-called Middle East and North Africa. The U.S. has been on a veritable rampage that has resulted in states that are now destroyed, political destabilization, and the scattering of these armed jihadist opposition groups that they enhance, over the last decade. And now these folks are now involved in blowback activities in the West, in Western Europe, and somewhat in the United States. So the policies have been a disaster. His foreign policy team, along with the Bush foreign policy teams, have been, I think, the most incompetent, perhaps, in the history of this country. There was a time, Mark, that you could see what the decision makers were thinking when they were formulating policies. You could see the fallacies of it, but at least you saw the logic of it. Mm-hmm. I can't follow the logic of these folks. They are the Bush folks and the Obama folks. They are complete and total incompetence. They operate at cross purposes, and we see the result: complete and utter incoherence in their policies, and the suffering of people as a consequence.
Libya specifically, your thoughts on that invasion?
Complete and utter disaster, unlawful, a criminal offense by the U.S. and NATO. This was another example of what I refer to as the U.S., EU, NATO axis of domination. This is straight up gangsterism. Mm-hmm. To go into Libya to enhance the ability of the Libyan fighting group, Libya Islamic fighting group, based in Benghazi, always the hotbed of Islamic reaction in Libya, to allow them to march down into the rest of the country and provide air support through the so-called no-fly zone legislation that was passed by the Security Council, that resulted in them dropping 26,000 bombs on people in Libya, and 50,000 people dying, and now the destruction of the most prosperous state on the continent.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Ajamu Baraka with us, folks, Vice President nominee for the Green Party. One of the criticisms of the Green Party is that it has not done what you said at the beginning of this interview you believe it is about to do, and that is, focus on building a real party in the individual states and what have you. One of the criticisms has also been is that we get wound up every 4 years, and then that's it, and then we have to start back over from scratch again every 4 years. Tell us more about that, and even in relation to how you're going to campaign, where you're going to go, what states are you going to be in. Mm-hmm. How is the Green Party? What is its strategy for building a 50-state campaign and for building state parties, and sustaining the party beyond 2016?
Well, I think the party is committed, and the campaign is committed to competing in all of the states, and the campaign is committed to helping to bolster the party structures in various states. there's a lot of energy, a lot of ability now to in fact do that. I mean, many of the infusion of energy from the Sanders folks has been very important. I'm going to help to facilitate that. A lot of the work that I'm going to do is going to be also, though, in the South. I want to, we're going to have a sort of a green Southern strategy, if you will, to revitalize and to expand and to enhance the structures in the South, where people basically are disenfranchised when it comes to the national office. I mean, folks, I guess people understand that basically, if you in Georgia and Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, and you want to vote for Hillary Clinton, your vote does not count. Those are solid red states. You don't count
in the general, right?
In the general election. So basically, So why not vote green at the top of the ticket? You can vote Democrat for the rest of it if you want to, but why not vote green at the top of the ticket? Add to our count so we can have enough of a percentage so that the party can be in a better position to even to compete next time. Yeah. So that's my strategy.
Yeah. A green Southern strategy.
There you go.
Lastly, and we really appreciate this time you spent with us, my brother. As you embark upon this campaign, this first time you run for electoral office?
First time.
All right. Are there any of our historical ancestors that inspire you to do this and sustain you throughout this effort? Malcolm, Du Bois, anybody? Is there anybody who kind of walks with you?
You might recall that I got that question at the town hall, and I identified Sister Fannie Lou Hamer, and I did that because of the role she played in 1964 with the Mississippi Freedom Democrat Party that attempted to unseat the racist Democrat Party of Mississippi. And when she and the other organizers went to New Jersey, and they tried to cut a deal with them, say, look, we're going to sit the normal Democrats, but we give y'all 2 seats, symbolic. And Fannie Lou Hamer said, we ain't come all this way for no 2 seats. So her position was consistent, that we're not compromising our principles. We're about trying to build something new and build power. And so for me, that was the symbolic departure from the Democratic Party for myself. And so my life has always been to try to liberate our folks from the Democratic plantation, and that is what motivates me for this run.
Kind of timely too, thinking about her being in Atlantic City. It surfaced that Trump described his employees in Atlantic City at one time, the African American employees, as being inherently lazy because we're all lazy. So good to see you, man. Glad you can make it in here in the studio. Good luck out here on the campaign trail. Making the case and making the argument, and congratulations on getting on CNN too. I think and I've said this to Jill. I don't know what's going to happen with Gary Johnson and them, but it seems to me that at least the 2 major parties ought not be so insecure as to not allow a full debate stage so that all the arguments could be heard. And frankly, being on that CNN forum was sort of a bit of equal time in that regard, at least for a minute. It's still not being on the debate stage, but we made that request. We sent a letter. Right.
We're trying to open up this process, and we hope that the people of this country support us in that effort.
Can I make a suggestion? Which the argument you ought to make is, I think Trump has sent every signal he's not going to the debates. So Hillary won't stand there by herself. She ought to let everybody else in.
Well,
he's not going to go. He's not going to debate.
Wow.
So so there'll be some debates. They ought to open the door. Exactly. So at least that 2 or 3 candidates rather than Trump being absent and Hillary standing there by herself. So that would be very, very interesting. It'd be interesting to see you up there with Tim Kaine and Pence and William Ward.
I look forward to it.
You my intellectual brother. I think you could hold your own. Of course. Good to see you. Ajamu Baraka, folks. Website for the party, Green Party, us.com. Is it have
Jill 2016.
Jill2016.com. That's it, Jill2016.com. Also, as Brother Ajamu has alluded to, he is a prolific scholar and writer. You can read all of his writings at ajamubaraka.com.
Yes.
A lot of great analysis and in-depth analysis, not just rhetoric at all. Very in-depth critique on all of the major issues of our day. You agree that Louisiana might be a human rights issue similar to Katrina?
It really is, and the unfortunate reality of that also too is that there are people who are being displaced in Louisiana who are now facing their second displacement. People who are displaced from New Orleans.
It's tragic. And just a bit of self-critique for our movement. I was on Twitter this morning, and the people in Baton Rouge were saying, it's one thing for everybody to come in and get worked up about Alton Sterling and the Black Lives Matter issue in Baton Rouge, but now they need us on this too. It's not just a one issue thing, and we need to be as all of us, I'm talking about all of us together, folks, me included, we need to be as vigilant on behalf of our people in Baton Rouge in this disaster as we were a few weeks ago in the police killing. So just keep that in mind. Good to see you, man. Good luck with everything.
Thank you so much.
And we're here, so let's stay in. Jill's on regularly. We want to have you on regularly too, and keep us posted about your movement and where you're going to be appearing around the country. Okay.
I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.
All right, my brother.
All right. Thank you very, very much.